That explains why it was lit.
Yeah, it's very close.
Jai Guru!
Yeah.
That's probably better.
Yeah. Feels a little safer.
Did I say my city was being careful around fire? See? The talker takes away cities all the time. Complicated, and I'm not very good at it. Put two together.
Can you control the camera on your phone from there?
Oh, that'd be good. I'm just trying to get it on. Put it on so people can watch it. It's coming. Luckily, because everything's green and moist, we haven't last 2 years since we started. We really haven't had to put the fire on because there's been high fire danger, red flag conditions after so many years of drought. Even like this morning, the last 4 or 5 days, it's been full
Really
morning,
foggy.
full fog. You put the fire, you can't even see the smoke. It's through the fog. So this is
I
nice.
noticed that this morning.
Luckily, life didn't last after a long time. We've only been able to keep like incense in here. This plate, can you take it? Just put it down.
This one?
Yeah, so it doesn't get too hot. Where was it? Where we were at Lopez. At Lopez? Yeah. Oh,
That's awesome. Aṭṭahāsa-prasannāsyā Chidadmasya Sarvadharma-sarūpiṇī Avasara-varishtāya Ramakrishnaye te namaha. Om Jananīṃ Sharadam Devīṃ Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Parapadme-tayo stritva Pranamāmi. Om Mangalam Gurudevāya Devye Matriksha Mangalam Mangalam Bhakta Brindebhyo Sarvalokāya Mangalam. Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Ashmat-acchara-prayantam Vande Gurum Paramparam Vande Gurum Paramparam. So after a very long time, during the last cold months, when it got too dark and cold to do it here, we tried to do inside the kutir. It was one person too much and the walls fall apart, so it didn't quite work. And then we tried to do inside, but there was a complication because we had people coming for arati and transition wasn't easy. Really, this is ideal. But when we're doing the satsangs earlier, so I'm very happy especially last week the time changed.
Yeah.
So now it's still light at appropriate time, not too cold. So we were trying to do during the kind of winter. We gave a few talks. We gave some on topic. We were things on yamas and niyamas and sanatana dharma. Upon which we requested that these topics have to be discussed. We wanted to discuss it. So we took a little break from the normal schedule. So originally what we were doing the last year, we were trying to do is kind of go back and forth between the Kālī Sahasranāma and the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And we're in the 10th skanda of the Bhagavatam, Krishna Lila, childhood Lila, Krishna is very wonderful and charming. And Kālī Sahasranāma, of course, is very wonderful and charming in a different way. So tonight we'll pick up where we left off with the 1,000 names of Kālī. Next week, God willing, we'll discuss again, and weather willing, we'll discuss, continue with the Krishna Lila, very beautiful section that we're in. And there was a few times in the previous months when we had a chance to maybe give a talk. My health wasn't so great, and we couldn't really chance to prepare. And some names just jump out. Oh, I can't wait to talk about this name. They're like your favorite names. You know? And others, they're important names. They're there for us to meditate and contemplate upon. But it's not exactly sure how to discuss how to discuss them. So that's one of the reasons I wasn't like, well, you know, no time to prepare, and weather's not good. I'm not feeling good. But really, I don't know what to say. Until I know what to say, I can't say it. You know. And so I've kind of put aside this cluster of names. But slowly, I'm thinking, well, even if we just read the name, say what it means, well, and keep going. You know, not everything requires. Some names we've done a whole talk just on one name. Others 3-4 names or 10 names. So we'll just start again. But this cluster of names has to do with her expression, right? Kālī, her face, her smile, her. Remember before we were talking. This is describing her rupa primarily. It's starting with her her talked about her 3 eyes, her Goradamstara, the one verse, right? Her fierce teeth, describing that her teeth are like the ages, the yugas. So so these are big, very dramatic things. Her mundamala, her garland of skulls, her garlands of heads. Teeth, or her 3 eyes. We get quite a bit of discussion about her eyes. So now it's going into kind of like her smile and expression, and kind of her mental state. But then we have to think. I think it becomes a little, I can't say silly. Oh, let me plug that in. You know how to plug the. Sorry, those who can't hear me. The microphone's going in. We've done this before.
Which verses are you on?
Oh. Good question. I think 13 and 14 maybe. Can you hear me? I think 13 and 14. Sorry. This has happened several times. We have an expensive, beautiful mic, and then we forget to plug it in. It looks, the cord even goes to the phone. Anyways. But, so now we're talking about, Ma's smile, and what's the meaning of her smile, and her expression, and how she glances, and does it even make sense to talk like this? I mean, some of it is just the iconography of Kālī. This is from the Dhyan mantra. This is, she has 3 eyes, a garland of severed heads. She has 4 arms. In this hand she holds it. So those things can be described as describing her image. But this is not exactly describing the classic iconography, because one name will say that she has very sweet face. The next a very good mind and therefore good expression. And the next name will say she's a horrible mind and a horrible expression. Right, so it's not exactly describing like the image or a painting of a picture. It's not exactly a Dhyan mantra, right? So it's describing. Well, how can you describe? She's both beautiful and ugly. She's both fierce and sweet, right? So, I mean, maybe a painter could paint an image. A master painter can paint an image that's both fierce and sweet. We've seen that in some of the paintings we've commissioned by expert artists. Or sometimes you have some paintings that express her sweetness and her love and affection, others her ferocity, right? So you can like that. But I think it's also it's not just a meditation on her form. Well, what do I mean her form? So we've Sri Ramakrishna M used this term in one of his titles. Was it Kālī Brahman?
Kālī Brahman.
Right, one word, no hyphen. Kālī Brahman. Right, it's very clear that Kālī is Brahman. Right, she has a history, and she has a scriptural history of her leelas like that. Right, she has her own distinct leelas and stories, clusters in the Puranas and tantras about her.
right? And she also has a history that can be described in academics of like, oh, she was a tribal deity who got absorbed into the Vedic pantheon. I mean, they can describe it that way, right? So that may or may not be true, and the leelas described in the scriptures may or may not be true, right? I mean, we believe they're true, but I mean, but that's not when Sri Ramakrishna says that Kālī Brahman, right? That what he calls Kālī, right, is not just a tribal deity or a cult deity, right, or a scriptural or a Hindu deity in the pantheon, a fierce goddess in the Hindu pantheon, right? It's Brahman, the supreme, absolute. It's like the one that the Vedas describe as Brahman, right? That he described as Kālī. Not only described her as Kālī or called Kālī, right? He saw her, talked to her, related to her intimately, like a child to its mother, right? So it's a very and so our tendency is to look at these verses ultimately from that light, right? And the verses themselves say that. They'll say again and again that she's the absolute, like that. So if she's Brahman, so what is Brahman? You can't say what is Brahman. There's no answer to that that thing. But there is one answer. Brahman is Kālī. Thakur said it, right? There is an actual answer for that, right? Brahman's also Krishna, right? The Vedanta say Brahman is Satchitananda, right? It's the self of all beings. It's the one reality, the substratum, everything, the source of it. You can start giving different ways of describing. You can say something about that which is indescribable. Right? We've spent a lot of time in the past talking about Brahman or God as the witness or the subject, as opposed to the object, right? And in which case you can't make God a subject, an object of discussion or perception, right? And therefore to say, oh, God's smile is like this, becomes a little silly, or God's angry, or God's loving, because you're making an external subject. But we can say that. I mean, it's the most natural to say God's our loving mother, or God, or it's also natural for a lot of people to say God's angry, right? At us or at you. Usually it's at you that God's angry. I'm pretty sure, not you specifically. I'm not pointing. You happen to be in front of me. It's not a theological point. It's a geographic point. So we've tried to bring this idea that when it says that God is, when you say, oh, Kālī is angry, or Kālī is loving, or Kālī is creative, right? That's the way we speak about God objectified as an object, as an object of glory, even an object not only of perception but an object of adoration, of meditation and contemplation, right? And it makes sense to say it in the world of duality, in that world. Right? Swami Vivekananda in his Bhakti Yoga has one very important little sentence, and one of them, maybe I can find it. I'll try to find it for next week. I think about it all the time. A little controversial, but he's analyzing psychologically, philosophically, what's going on when we think of God, when we say God's name, right? And not to be. He is also being careful not to offend people's religious sentiments. But he says what the Ishta Devata, right, or the name that we meditate upon, the form we meditate upon. He said when you get down to the very nitty-gritty of it, to the fine point, it is an attempt to make the subject an object, right? We meditate upon with heart, know yourself, so know thyself, right? The problem is the self is a knower, not an object of knowledge. How do you know yourself, right? So, I mean, there are techniques for that, of self-contemplation, stilling the mind, the vritti stop, the self-rested, the seer rest. I mean, yoga has an answer, Vedanta has an answer, there's different answers for that. But Tantra and Bhakti Yoga also has an answer, right? It's called Ishtadevata. It's called meditation on the name and form of the deity, right? Knowing that the name and form of the deity is not something separate, right? It's a way of seeming to separate in order to meditate upon that upon the meditator. And that's also not to say, sorry, it's a long-winded introduction, as is my tradition. We haven't talked in a long time, and I have to wind myself up a bit to get going. Right? It's not to say, by saying that, but I have to meditate on myself. Why is it? Because I'm Brahman, right? Or I'm Kālī, or I'm Krishna, and that becomes on its even at the syntax level becomes absurd. At the grammatical level, it becomes absurd, right? So spiritually, there's truth to it, but it's not the truth, right? That's the danger. There's truth to it. There's truth in every lie, also, right? The greatest mistake I think it can be made, perhaps and some would hold to be the foundational mistake, is I'm God, right? But in one sense, it's not incorrect to say it. That's why there's some charm, right? The thing, because when we say I, we don't mean, it's not the subject, it's the ego, right? It's not the subject, it's the ego, and the ego is also an object, not a subject, right? It's a mistake. So when we meditate on the self, it's not the ego, it's not it's like Swami Bhajanananda is the self, right? Yadevi sarva bhuteshu chaitana, you are the self of all beings, right? And Swami Bhajanananda there's something here called Swami Bhajanananda, but it's not in all beings is the problem, right? I'm trying, but it's not, and no matter what I do, I'm not going to be in all beings, right? But there is something, not even a thing, there's someone or some, can't say, well, the thing is, there's no something, there's not a thing or someone either, that's a problem. That is in all beings, right? That's consciousness and the only one conscious. And in a great mystery, it's the only one thing that the one that's conscious is conscious of, right? And in Tantra we call that Prakash and Vimarsha, or Shiva and Shakti, or it's like, so within the one awareness, the one being, the one that philosophically we call Kālī, and devotionally philosophically we call Brahman, and devotionally Thakur called Kālī, and we're calling Kālī, right? Is the subject, is the only one, is the only person, it's the only reality. And as the only reality, what does it see? It doesn't see another person. It sees itself in all things. So it has become all things. The Thakur said, the one has become all this, right? And one thing we can say in the language of duality, we can say, it's because he is manifesting, or she is manifesting, or it is manifesting as everything, as all names and forms, right? That's one way. You can occasionally throw some wood in there. Keep our journey going. Good, thank you. What was I saying? But it manifested all things. But if it's only awareness, let's just not think about manifestation. That's another way of looking at the same thing. It's only awareness. What's it aware of? Only itself, right? So the other is only itself also. Right, and so we're all others. We're all the self and others in a weird way, right? So this thing, the one being, and Bhagavatam uses this language, even though it's extremely devotional and has a dualistic starting point for the language of devotion. There are many verses, we've discussed them and highlighted them carefully, that the one that we're being worshipped, it's the one that it's the only one seeing through all eyes, hearing through all ears, right? And what does it hear? It hears only it's only another expression of itself, right? So in that world of duality, of the one perceiving and being perceived, right? When we talk like that, right? Then it makes sense to say what we're being perceiving. Oh, how beautiful it is, or she is, or he is, or how sweet, or how horrible. When we realize the stupendous nature of that, tremendous nature of that reality, it becomes tremendous. It makes sense to speak like that, right? And it's not ridiculous to say God is smiling, or Kālī has a beautiful smile, or Kālī has a fierce laugh, right? One of the things we've also discussed along this point is not only that Kālī is loving, because that's a way to describe it, but actually she's the only reality, so Kālī is love. Not that Kālī is angry at somebody, Kālī is anger. Everything is only her manifestation, or the perception of everything is only her, right? So the one verse that's trying to get myself wound up to think about these things. The other day we were discussing the Katamrita, and in M's original, in the Bengali, he'd start every chapter, or many of the chapters or sections, with little we call them epigrams, little verses, right? That in his idea would summarize or introduce or describe something in that chapter, right? And so this one is jumped out from the Mahanirvana Tantra, in chapter 4, verse 15 of Mahanirvana Tantra. Tvameva sukshma tvam stula. Tvameva, you alone are, shukshma, means subtle, right? You are subtle or you are subtlety. Because you alone are subtle. It's not saying, oh, you are subtle and you are you're the only one that's subtle. That's a way of saying you're subtlety. You're that principle, that category. And tvam stula. And you are gross. Right? So already, this is, at the face value, this becomes ridiculous. He's both, you are the subtle, you are the gross. Right? Or you are subtle and gross, or you are the subtle and you are the gross. Right? Vyakta avyaktva rupini. We've come to those names earlier in the Kula Śreṣṭhā. You are vyakta and avyakta. Your rupini, your form is both vyakta or your nature is vyakta avyakta. Means vyakta means ascribable or manifested, and indescribable, unmanifested. So you are the gross and the subtle, or you are gross and subtle, or the gross and subtle. You are undescribable and describable, or manifest, unmanifest, or you are that which is both manifested, unmanifest, describable, and indescribable, which means you are the world of name and form that's describable and perceivable and manifested, and you are that which is beyond name and form, or prior to name and form, behind name and form, therefore not describable, not manifested, right? Nirakarapi sakara. You are nirakar, without qualities, and sakara, and with qualities, right? And that Thakur, the opening page, is what just yesterday you read, right? That was a section Swamiji read of Thakur's words, right? You think Thakur asked M, you like nirakar or sakar? You think God has with qualities or without qualities? And to M, this was a very controversial statement in his own mind. Not only he had a particular view, and probably a prejudiced view, I think is this, and people are foolish to think the other. And people of the other school, this is obviously, the people are offensive to think the other. Right? They're both, like that's just at an emotional level. But at a philosophical level, he had trouble. Right? These seem to be contradictory ideas. You can't be, what he said, a white thing can't be black, or can a white thing be black? That's Aristotelian principle of non-contradiction. It's a logical principle. A door can't be both open and closed. You can put a door kind of. You can keep it ajar. But anyways, the basic, something is or isn't there, right? These are the law of non-contradictions, right? But Thakur said, oh, your idea is good, right? God is like that, right? And you hold to it, but don't think that you're alone. That your view alone is true, right? God is both with form, not without form, or with qualities, without qualities. And here it says, you are manifest, unmanifest, right? Sukshma, and you are both gross and subtle. You can't be both gross and subtle. I mean, some people are gross. That's a different and subtle. Subtly gross. That's not what's meant. But vyakta, nirakara, rapi, sakara, kastvam, veditam, arhati. Right. And so when you make such statements, you are gross and subtle, or the gross and the subtle. You are vyakta. You are manifest, unmanifest, describable, indescribable, right? Or that which is describable and indescribable. And you are with qualities and without qualities. Or you are that which is a quality without quality. Both ways of looking at it. So basically you're saying, you're not using logical terms, right? It's like it does go against logic. It goes against sentiment, right? At one level, right? And therefore he says, this being the case, what can we say about you? What can we think about you? Right. In a certain sense, saying, he says, who has the capacity to describe you? Right. When you're what is it? There's a beautiful line, a poem in Walt Whitman that says something like, or a poem or a statement where I think it was Walt Whitman, but like the truth is big enough to hold contradictions. Something like that, right?
I embrace contradictions.
Something like that. I embrace something, but there's some, when I was younger and had more memory, I could generate. It's in there somewhere, but that something like the truth is big enough to hold contradictions, right? But therefore, and so this is a very big statement given Shiva. I believe, if I remember properly, Shiva is speaking to Devi on this in this scene in the Mahāyanabana Tantra, which is classic Tantra. Right. So we should be a little bit I haven't got to the verse, but this is also a good verse to talk about, so I have no problem. We're just talking about Ma. I don't have to get to our verse. We'll get to our verse. But I sometimes when I'd be invited to speak at high school. Remember we went to that high school like that, and one of the things we would get like describe your religion in 5 minutes or less, and pass the mic down. So everybody got to hear their things. Like, what do you say? I'm beginning to doubt. I began to doubt the ultimate value of such presentations. So I stopped going. They have value, but for me it wasn't. I thought it wasn't a good use. There could be others who are better equipped for those discussions. But I figured, well, they got a few seconds. I only got 5 minutes or less, right? So let me say something that will at least, hopefully, maybe expand somebody's mind. And so I said, well, the idea in Hinduism, whatever that means, we have this philosophical idea for God is Brahman, which means the immense, the infinite, the beyond, the inconceivable, right? Infinite. And therefore, any statement about an inconceivable being, or an infinite being, right? An unlimited being, a huge being, even if it's limited but huge, right? By a finite being, a limited being, a temporary being, right? Would have to be taken. No, statements can't be. We're going to the Kālī Sahasranāma, 1,000 such statements. God is like this. God is like this. God is like this. So but the opposite's also true, right? So any absolute statement about my limited being, about an infinite being, should be taken with a little bit of with a grain of salt, right? Should be taken a little, and therefore, and this is my chance to say something bold in front of high school young kids that are judging me. It's not cool. Is therefore statements about like the only way, right? The one book, the final prophet, the one savior. I mean, all those absolute statements, right? Becomes, even if they're true, we shouldn't trust the formation of that statement, right? Because this is one of the important verses of Caṇda-muṇdāti-veginī, actually saying you're form and formless, you exist and you don't exist, you're gross and subtle, you can be described. It's like, what can we say about you? What can anybody say about you, right? But actually it says who has the capacity to adequately describe you, right? Like what you are. And so I was remembering running around trying to prepare for today, that song, I think Komala Kanta. It says who says Mother Kālī is black, right? Sometimes she's red, sometimes she's blue, sometimes she's white, sometimes she's yellow, sometimes she has form, sometimes she's formless, sometimes she's closed in space. And it's like thinking of these things. Komala Kanta goes mad. That's the punchline of the song, right? Because these things are all true. But if you try to make a system out of it, you go mad, right? Which is that, but he wants to go mad, right? That's the madness, because the one, the infinite one, the mind, the finite mind touches the infinite, it explodes, right? And we see that in the effect of in the lives and behavior of saints and sages and the ecstatic lovers. I shall sip tea. So this is my preamble to the fact that Ma is smiling at us right now. So last week we finished not last week, last year it seems, we finished name 87, which was at the end of verse 12. I think on our podcast I mislisted it. I think it says verse 11 or something. We have to change that. The first, a little complicated to chant. Let me give it my best shot. Aṭṭahāsa-prasannāsyā Smera-vaktrā Subhāṣiṇī Prasanna-padma-vadanā Smitāsyā Priya Bhāṣiṇī. Also on the Facebook, I gave the verses, so you can, and I'll add them to the video in the comments, so people can see the verses to study them. So Aṭṭahāsa-prasannāsyā. So this is the first. It's a big, and the thing is, when Gita Prana and myself were working on this, she was translating these names years ago. Unfortunately, we know we've kind of lost that original translation, although we're still searching them. she says, like, how do you separate names? Like, that can be one name, right? But Aṭṭahāsa could be a name, and then Prasanna-padma-vadanā could be a second name. Where do you separate the name? It should add to be 1,000, right? So and so there's a traditional way. She broke a few a little differently. Said they'd make more sense and are more beautiful, right? And then there's no standard, right? Like Lita Sahasranāma, there's a standard, right? We talked about that already. But so Aṭṭahāsa-prasannāsyā. Atta is not fully clear. I looked at. I don't have knowledge of that word. It's A-T-T-A with the dental T, double dental T, right? Other translations have to do with like being big and great, and it could be like that way. I don't know enough. I don't know the term, and I couldn't find it in the regular dictionaries that I have access to. But two other translators I've seen use like big or great and a lot of the other names describe as big, so it makes sense that it could mean that. Right, Aṭṭahāsa. Hasa means smile, right? That even I think in Hindi there's a root for that also. Hasa, and Prasanna. Anybody know? There's a common name, Prasanna. Right? Anybody know? Happy, pleasant, like this, favorable. And Asya here means like abiding, right, or existing, right? So it means her smile is her great smile. If Atta means great, is she has a pleasant expression. So here it is, Ma smiling at us, right? That's good. Put another piece of wood, another ghee. Duni Mata is smiling at me too by throwing smoke in my face. That will help. Actually, there's 2-3 names all have roughly the same meaning, right? That thank you. Ma is the one who's smiling. So, of course, that description of her rupa, you can see her in images, this beautiful smiling face. And even people say, oh, Kālī is like a fierce deity, she's not smiling, there must be Lalita. These are all forms of her. Maybe it's a form that's extremely sweet face. But part of these names are also about states of mind, right? So, to say somebody is smiling, have a smiling face means that they're happy, right? Or they're pleased and pleasing, like that. And so to say that she's happy, that's a beautiful thing. God's happy and smiling, right? But it also is that state. She's a subject, right? And the subject, when it enters the world of our world duality, becomes a quality. So she's happiness, or she's that state of consciousness that's expressed by this expression, right? Smera-vaktrā. This is name 89. This has almost identical meaning, right? Smera here also means smiling, right? Just like in Sanskrit, there's 100 words for lotus. There's a lot of names for smiling, a lot of names for big, a lot of names for, So here's another. We'll get 3 or 4 different names for smiling in this section, right? So she's Smera, smiling, right? And then Vaktra. Vaktra generally means, because this is, and it makes sense to mean here, it means face, right? So in other words, her face is smiling, right? But also, Vaktra also means, it's not face, but just like we have this term mukha. Mukha means face, mukha means mouth, right? And in English we'd also say it's on, we said it's on his tongue, on his lips, on his face. These are all saying they're roughly the same thing. So this is also a quality of like the organ of speech. The organ of speech would be the tongue, right? But that's not, her tongue is smiling. Is not a thing to say, I don't think, right? But that also means her lips, her mouth, but also means it's her vehicle of expression. She's expressing pleasing things. In the last verse, her smile is pleasing, right, or happy, and here her speech is smiling, her mouth is smiling, her expression is smiling. But so it's not just the face; it's also or the lips. It's the organ of expression. So maybe she translated it as her speech, right? When it means good speech or pleasant speech, right? You can see somebody smiles at you, right? That it's and then they start speaking, they hopefully will match, right? The face she is all that divine expression, that pleasant expression. And one of the names here will also be, she's also from a cultured family, so it's also refined. It's righteous, refined, sophisticated expression. Polite, another way of saying also. So here we are calling Kālī, who's according to Wikipedia, Kālī is a destructive deity of Hindu deity of destruction. Right. But here she says she's smiling at you, right? So she's also she's a pleasant expression, right? Then Prasanna-padma-vadanā. Here again, prasanna, pleasant, same word, or happy, right? Padma means, everybody knows, lotus, right? Lotus. And vadana. Vadana here also means, once again, mouth, face, tongue, smile, by extension, speech, right? The act of speaking. A good way, I think, I was thinking how to, almost like your countenance. That's the word. Her countenance is pleasing or pleasant or lovely, or like a lotus, right? And so sometimes we describe, Ma has lotus eyes, right? Usually that's because they're shaped like lotus petals. That's usually what it means, right? Right? Or like Meenakshi, she has fish eyes. And that's because those eyes go way back like this, right? But sometimes Padma is also a beautiful thing. So whether or not her face is shaped like a lotus or not, a lotus is a very beautiful thing, right? And therefore her speech, her face, it's just like the beauty of a lotus. It's a very poetic usage to describe something as extremely beautiful. And we know Padma is considered a symbol of spirituality and the soul's expression. What the nature? Why one of the reasons that lotus is such a nice image. Of course, its primary thing is that it comes out of mud and then still blooms, so that's a symbol of the soul and the body like that. But also, in a yantra we use a lotus a lot, right? You have triangles and circles and squares represent certain principles, and then you have usually a cluster of lotus, 8, 16, 32 types of lotus petals, which, in a very simple introductory understanding of the geometry of symbolism of sacred geometry, lotuses are also things that blossom, bloom, and therefore when they open, and you see the lotuses are pointed out, right? So they blossom out. So it's those energies from within, whatever those triangles are representing, are now expressing, and they're expressions in the world of name and form. They're expressing in this world, right? So here her countenance is expressing like a lotus, like a beautiful, pleasant lotus, right? Which is one way we could say that she's expressing as this beautiful world, right? And you can see some saints see this world is beautiful because they see her. They see her smiling, and we even some use that language. I see her smiling in every flower. I see her hiding behind. It's like the poets have used and the saints have used this language, right? They see her smile in everything, right? So that's Prasanna-padma-vadanā. Again, another name, Smitāsyā. Smitāsyā. Again, Smita. We use here. Smita means again smile, right? And Asya. Asya could be. This is a qualifying word. It means like abiding, right? So she has. I think in one translation, she's always happy. She's always in happiness, right? That's one thing. Or she abides in. So you can say, by Smitāsyā means she's always smiling, right? But to say that Kālī is always smiling and always happy, that doesn't seem to be a thing, because the next verse will soon say that she's Caṇda, angry, and fierce, right, and frowning, and after you with a sword, right. So that's why we in our introduction I wanted to establish that it's not just that she's smiling or she's happy; she's happiness, right? She abides. Yadavi sarvuteshu stita. Shakti rupena samstita. She is established, she abides, she exists as happiness. Right? This is a way of saying this. And it's nice because it'd be very nice if we could start. Of course, happiness is a good thing, right? But happiness and misery, they're not spiritual things in and of themselves. They're just a world duality. People are happy, people are miserable. And it goes back, what is it, Kabikuchi, what is it? Kabikuchi, Kabigama, the famous, sometimes happy, sometimes miserable, right? One of the great lines. I mean, for a while, that was when the posters came out for that famous Hindi movie, I think, right? That became our motto. Kabikuchi, how are you doing? Kabikuchi, Kabigama. Sometimes happy, sometimes miserable. like, that's it, the world duality. How you doing? Happy and good and bad, you know, what to do. That's the world duality. But it's another thing, if you can see the one who's in happiness, and see the one who's in misery, that's a different thing. That's the next level, right? You know, it's not only we're happy to know in the world duality, which is her. She manifests as happiness and sorrow, right? As pleasant and unpleasant reality, as birth and death. But to see her means to see something behind the form. To see her in happiness and in misery is to see that which is independent, that was prior to, or the foundation of happiness and misery. Right, in the verse in the Gita where it says the learned, the Pandita Samadarshana, the Pandit, a wise person, an educated person, a realized person, is somebody who sees what is the same in what? A Brahmin, a journeyman to a Brahmin, a cow, a dog, an elephant, and a dog eater. Right, it's full extreme of animals and people and society and purity and intelligence, everything, the full variety. It doesn't say to see them as the same. It may say that, but that can't be what it means, because they're not the same. Just to say that a dog and an elephant are the same, one's a dog, one's an elephant, right? But to see them equally is something different than to see them as the same thing. They're not the same thing, right? But to see them equally is to see what is the same in all of them, right? To see which is the same in happiness and misery, right, is a very different thing. Swami Omananda, he says that these, in the world duality, our main experiences we're bookended with birth and death. These are the big ones, right? And in between, we have happiness and misery, we have success and failure, and we have fame and infamy. Good reputation, and he may have come with, but that's the main one, right? So actually, that's going on all the time. He said, if you can keep your mind steady, he says, just 1 month. 1 minute is hard enough, but just 1 month. He's not making it easy for us, but just 1 month, then you have made huge. Your whole life you can be established, right? Because not only that it's not necessarily that you ignore. It's like you slowly you get to see the one that's not changing. So another way to describe it is like the waves of an ocean, right? Waves, sometimes they're up, sometimes they're down. That's going to be natural, right? But to be conscious of the depth of the water. Right, the one that the ocean's made out of, that's okay. Even say, oh, I know the ocean's made of water, doesn't mean I'm not going to be bewildered by the ups and downs of the waves, right? But to be conscious of the depth of the ocean, right? Even to see that within the waves, right? Then slowly the mind gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And what happens on the surface level of consciousness, which is that which is expressed as smiling and weeping, right? Doesn't agitate, does not throw you off, right? And so we sometimes say, and people have said, and we repeat, that in meditation, that's what we try to do in meditation. In meditation, we try to make the mind deep, right? And therefore, when we open our eyes and go into the world of the ever-changing ocean of existence, right, we're not bewildered by what happens on the surface. It happens on the surface. Let it happen. It's supposed to. Right, but we have to bring the mind deep in meditation to see the one. Smitāsyā, she's smita, smiling, abiding. She abides she's always smiling, always happy. Priya Bhāṣiṇī. Now Bhāṣiṇī is a better word for expression, right? This is her, like somebody's like, why you have a bad look? You have a worried look on your face. That's like this Bhāṣiṇī. So it's Priya. So she's Priya Bhāṣiṇī. So Priya means Priya? Dear means dear, lovely, loving, affectionate. There's a variety that they use. So it could be that her face is she's always loving and dear, her expression. Like a mother looking at her child, which is what it is. We see mother looking at her lovely child, right? We use that the closest thing the saints say, the closest we can understand of Ma's real affection towards us is like an earthly mother to its child. Right? Even that is considered to be an imperfect reflection. But in the world, that's considered the purest thing. Right? But in the world duality, it's still not perfect. Right? In the divine realm, this is the absolute truth, that the complete affection and concern and support and so we see her expression is that, but it's again, she's also to be seen in all affectionate dealings. Whenever you see love, whenever you see affection and dearness, that's the manifestation of the Devi, right? And the Devi is looking at us that way, because that's actually the same thing, right? Her looking at us lovingly and us noticing her in lovely looks, right? the word like that is actually the same thing. It's practice. We practice by seeing it, and then it becomes more and more fixed, a deeper realization. Priya Bhāṣiṇī. I think that's verse 13. So, verse 14. Name 94. Koṭarākṣī. Koṭarākṣī. Akshi means eyes, right? It's describing her eyes, right? But also you have to remember, this is a cluster of names about expression, right? So it's something. It's not just like the shape of her lips forming a smile. It's her countenance, her expression, her, right? So here, the eyes are more expressive than lips sometimes. My eyes are being filled with beautiful smoke from the dhuni. Koṭa. So some translation I saw, the Koṭa is like big and huge and infinite, a way of like your eyes are infinite like that. But actually, if we analyze the name, and I think it fits the meaning, Koṭare means like cavity or cave, right? And but it has a bit of a like Halloween-y type of quality, it's like that, like that, the cavern, it's the scary, or even like, and to describe the caves of somebody's eyes, right, is like, that's so, it's like almost like looking into a skull, that type of thing, like it's like, and so that's kind of the feeling that it's given, although she's so beautiful or all beauty, she's also, thank you. No. Caves of my eyes. So it also means like, also it could be to describe somebody's eyes as cave-like or cavernous, right? It's almost like hollow, right? It has that type of, the way of saying her expression is also, these are symbols of death or sickness, right? Or of, and when, of course, she's also death and sickness. That's part of it, and she is in death and sickness. But some commentators have meditated on this verses, or this name is almost like the void, right? It's like, even like when we start thinking of the Halloween-y type of images, like smashans and things like that, the saints have given, smashan means Brahman, like which is beyond name and form, right? So it's like, it's this type of, and void not as in nothing, but it's not void as in doesn't exist. It's there's nothing that exists in the great field of the great womb of consciousness, right? So it's kind of that. It's using a little bit of that image that she's also, while she's all this, she's always pleasant and loving, right? But she's also, you've seen. I was thinking that there's a painting or something that has a beautiful woman looking in the mirror, and in the mirror there's a skull looking
called
back.
The vanity.
Vanity, right? Almost like that. That image. The famous painting.
It's like from close up, it's a woman sitting at her vanity, putting on to make her looking at a reflection. but when you step back, the way the shading and the lighting, it looks like a skull.
Right. Now, that's a commentary on decorating our skull with makeup, like that. That's not the, but still, I sometimes think like that. While she's in all that's beautiful, behind everything is also the fierce truth that nothing survives, nothing exists, in one sense, So I think it's something, a little play. And I think it's reasonable to say this was because of the other names in this cluster, right? Kula Śreṣṭhā. Now here, Śreṣṭhā means superior, best, foremost, classical. So and Kula means family. So we've spent a lot of time on this Kula name, right? And the general view is that it means she's from a good family. She's from the highest type of family, right? So it could be just describing her. She's the royal queen. She's the empress of the universe, right? And so she's, but Kula also means Kundalini. Kula also is a spiritual path. Kula is is esoteric, is a school of Tantra, right? So this could also be a little bit of a hint, because I mentioned that different texts are in Kula Marg and Vama Marg and Dakshina Marg, like that. There's different traditions, and Kālī Sahasranāma pulls equally from all three, right? It's not. It has names that pull. So you have to understand at least theoretical, some knowledge of the Kaula Kula path, right? And so could be, I may be imposing an interpretive, but that's what we're doing, is interpreting, is this view that she's so beautiful and all lovely and always smiling and in all smiling, she's also the cavernous eyes of death and skulls and void and destruction and nirvana and these other negative type of things, right, is itself a fundamental teaching of the Kula Marg and these other aspects of Tantra. It's a way of looking at the world, right? And so this is the most excellent. This is, in a certain sense, the highest teaching of the Kula Marg. And Kula, Kula Śreṣṭhā means the highest, the supreme teachings. It could be. And that is actually, even Sri Ramakrishna said when there's a Baal song he sang once, right? And using very dramatic language, right? That's meant to be shocking to us, right? Says eventually you'll reach that highest state, right? Something like this, when you'll tell your mantra with a rosary with cow bone and tulsi, back and forth, right? With the here I have Rudraksha and Bibla. These are two holy sacred things. But these are like the most holy wood. The most holy bead is tulsi, and the most inconceivably bad bead would be a cow bone or a human bone, right? He says, but when you do your japa on both of them, right, then you've attained that state. Some people do that as a practice. They do japa in order to go beyond ritual period. I mean, that's a different thing, and that's more the Vama Marg. Kula Marg doesn't necessarily have to do that. It has to realize that, right? We worship the one beautiful goddess, but she's everything beyond the world of duality, right? Right. So that could be a little bit, because it's just shoved in here. There's no other name about Kula family and excellent, right? Everything else is about her expression, and her mind and her smile, right? So I think it may be a little hint to interpreting this section. Kula Śreṣṭhā, Mahatī. Now here there's a name involved, but there's Mahatī, Sumatiḥ, and Kumatiḥ. 3 names are given, right? And they have and in between it there's Bahu Bhāṣiṇī. So Bahu Bhāṣiṇī means who is unlimited different types, has many types of expressions, right? So in other words, she's not just smiling. She's not only compassion and motherly affection, right? She's every type of expression. She expresses in every possible, or she expresses in every possible way, or she is all types of expressions. She's all the expressions you see are her forms. Bahu Bhāṣiṇī. So first, Mahatī. Maha means great, large, right? And usually Mahatī is like large-minded, great-minded, and it's something we use that term. Oh, he's very large-minded. She's very, noble and large. There's a broad. There's other. It has that type of mood, that type of idea to it. But it also gets describing her mind is infinite, right? And so and therefore the next 3-4 names are describing that infinite nature of her mind, right? Inconceivably large, right? So, like for instance, Bahu Bhāṣiṇī. Her mind is huge, infinite, vast, expansive, ununderstandable, beyond, right? and therefore her expressions are variegated, or the variety. Tell me.
So Bhāṣiṇī is visual expression or verbal expression?
It's like that, like some mukh is both the face and the tongue, right? So how do you understand Bhāṣiṇī in normal language?
For verbal.
For verbal.
Like Bhāṣa would be a language.
No, actually that's very good. That's a good point, because Bhāṣa means Bhāṣiṇī. It's spelled here with a B, here Bhāṣiṇī, but it's related to, and also we see Bhāṣa as a commentary, right? But so it is connected to that, but because the expression of the language is connected in all these names to the expression of the face. A visual expression, but it's behind that is also language, right? So you're right. It's a good point. I'm sorry if I didn't bring enough of that out. So she has various expressions, or not only expressions in her face, like I said, but also all varieties of language, or of the types of things that are said. So therefore, not just different types of language or different types of words, but it's like pleasant speech, or pleasant language, pleasant and unpleasant, and in that way, you know. So her mind is infinite, and her expression by speech or by expression, her expression by expression. You know what I'm talking. I'm using the same word for 2 points, but English has Sanskrit has that does it even more. We don't have our problem. We don't have enough words to fit. We have a small amount of words to fit these ideas. And then Sumatiḥ. So mati here is understood to be mind. Su means good, right? Good-minded, right? So what is good-minded? It means wise, intelligent, right? Learned, right? So if it's expression, she has all. But if it's connected to Bahu Bhāṣiṇī, then this is an example. Right, so she's all learned speech, learned expression, educated utterances. Right, there's words that are very, it's like some people they have just the right way to say, and other people also know what they're saying. There's a difference. There's some people know what they're saying. Some people are really good at speaking and know just right thing, but other people have authority. They have knowledge. Right, that's generally understood as Sumatiḥ here, and then Kumatiḥ. Ku is opposite of that. Right, Kumatiḥ is like foolish, ignorant. Right, and there's people who just even smart people could say really stupid things or don't know how to speak. That could be Kumatiḥ. Also, it could just be foolish people. Also, usually foolish people are the ones speaking. Right, we call them pundits. Right, and, but they're not in modern language. Like these people say the most stupid things on TV. Pundits. Yeah. Right, Sama Darshana Pandita. A real pundit speaks very carefully and only like Sumatiḥ. He expresses very carefully wise things. Right. So here, foolish also means weak-minded, wicked-minded, evil-minded, bad sentiments, or just wrong, right? People are speaking the truth. Su is good, but it also means true. They're speaking true things well, and with and effectively, right? With knowledge, and also, foolish people are speaking badly. Or foolish people are speaking well, or knowledgeable people are speaking bad. This Bahu Bhāṣiṇī is all kinds of forms, like this. And in all these forms, it's her, right? In the Kālī Śreṣṭhā, there's some name like this, right? Or some verse that you are the
you are the utterance that stills speech, and you are the speech that brings ruin.
All these different ways of speaking. All these so this is a big thing. So also when you start talking about Ma's face and Ma's smile, right, and Ma's expression, right, then that's while there is Kālī in the other room that's been carved to match this description, right, and we can meditate upon the deity Kālī as our Ishta Devata having this like that. But we can also, it's not a huge step to understand, this is that all forms of expression are her. Pleasant forms of expression, all language, all words, all utterances, all relations, these are all to see her, and this is the Kulama, this is the the highest Kula marg, as that verse said, right? This is the view to see her in all manifestation, all vibration. And then to say, oh, is Ma speaking, or are we speaking and invoking Ma? This is a tantric text. Let's talk a little bit. In Tantra, what is it? It's the within the infinite field of consciousness, there seems to be some pulse, right? It starts with a spanda, right? We can say like that. They use this language in Tantra, right? So that first vibration, in one sense is perfectly pure. It's not perfectly pure because vibration is already, still consciousness is pure. Shiva is absolutely pure. But within that, by its own intrinsic nature, Swatantara Shakti, there seems to be a desire, inborn desire to manifest, to experience, right? And there seems to be a vibration, or there is a vibration, right? That vibration, we call in Vedanta, it's called Om, right? We know the sound of that vibration, right? Or and Om. Actually, you think in Trividya Tantra, when you think of a yantra, that vibration is the dot, right? That first drop, that first pulse, right? And when you paint you okay with the smoke? You can adjust yourself. I can't because okay, it's all temporary.
She's the fire, the smoke, the one coughing.
Yeah. And it will pass, and she'll still be there. What I say? When you paint the bindu, when within the bindu, it's said, right, that it's one dot, right? But there's not one dot; it's two dots. It should be painted as two dots, and as a seed, because a seed has two parts, right? Without the two parts, there could be no germination. So within the one seed, it's actually two seeds, right? But actually, there's three seeds, right? So when you draw, it's going to follow you everywhere, you know. It's after I told you, right? There's three. So actually, when you draw a yantra, right, the bindu, some painted yantras you'll see three dots painted to look like one dot, right? It's painted as two dots. One dot is two dots to three dots, right? And I sometimes trying to describe some tantric yantric things. It becomes one that expands. It becomes the first triangle. Exactly. That's the trikona. Right, the three dots. So what is it? So when you have only one reality, in Tantra there's only one reality, we call it Brahman, Shiva, Purusha, whatever, Tattva, whatever the language to school and organize a little bit. There's only one reality. But there can't be only one reality. There can only be only one reality. That's by logical definition, right? And faith statement of the sages of Vedanta and of Tantra. There's only one reality. What is that reality? It's consciousness. Consciousness has to be conscious of something, right? So automatically, to have one consciousness, you have to have something to be conscious of. So automatically, there's two. That's why the world duality, the world of non-dual and duality, they're two. It's intrinsic, right? Because so if somebody's conscious, it has to be conscious, but there's no second thing to be conscious of. There seems to be a separation between that which is the consciousness and the subject and object. Shiva needs to see himself. He has to see something, but there's nothing besides him, so he can only see himself, right? So we call that prakash, the light of awareness, has to shine in something to reflect the word. That's called